how can we get revenue per op up, right? Or how can we get revenue per patient up? Or what's our recare? What are those kind of conversations? Because when we look at revenue today, we ask the client, how does this feel? Do you feel like you're at the, I'm going to say optimal capacity? I'm not going to say max. Like no one's at 100%, right? But are you at an optimal capacity? Are you happy with this performance? If the answer is no, okay, let's have the next conversation of, hey, okay, what do we look at? Let's look at recare rate. Let's look at our hygiene. Let's look at different aspects from that perspective.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast, where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? I'm Steve Jensen, a data dental nerd and your host.
Welcome, everyone, to another Growth in Dentistry podcast. I'm super excited for the episode this week. I think, as you know, so we're recording this October 14th. I was reminded by our guest, Patrick Arnold, that tomorrow is, if you filed an extension, the tax deadline. And this is going to air long after that. But it's a time of the year, as you approach the end of the year, you start to think about, okay, how do I close out the year? Maybe you think some tax strategy. You start thinking around planning for the next year, for 2025. And I thought it'd be good to have Patrick come and join the show. Now, before I jump in and give like an official intro to Patrick, every week I have to give a shout out to the marketing team at Dental Intelligence for sponsoring this podcast. It's a gift that they are willing to put in dollars and resources to support me in doing this every week. I think it's a big deal to get information out to the industry that's helpful. And I love that they are backing the cause as well. So as always, they have an offer for folks that listen to the podcast. If you'll come and get a demo of Dental Intelligence, they'll give you a $50 gift card just for checking it out. If it's been a while, there's lots of cool new things that have been coming out. Scorecards has been kind of like our main newest feature, and it allows you to grab all the data that folks have been used to in Dental Intelligence. And then we've even added a bunch of new metrics. So just recently we added like the lifetime patient value metric is in there now. We just added a referral source scorecard. And then coming in this quarter, the end of 2024, we actually have like an insurance analysis scorecard that's going to go in there as well. So we're constantly adding new things in there. It's been a while. Check it out. They'll give you a $50 gift certificate just for doing a demo. Okay. Now, without any few more stuff to be said, I want to introduce you to Patrick Arnold. He's become a good friend of mine. I just met him really kind of like, I've known who you are, but really officially at our Intellicon event just a few months ago. And Patrick is a certified public accountant, graduated from Marshall University, has been doing this for 8 years plus, and is just a wealth of knowledge. I love talking with him because he's not your traditional CPA. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but like in my life experience, most CPAs really do fit the like paperclip mold, kind of boring folks. You get them in front of a room and you're like, okay, when are we done? But Patrick is awesome. He's charismatic. He loves what he does. He's passionate not only about his expertise in the accounting and finance world, but he's also passionate about helping dental practices and dental groups, and found his perspective on finance and dentistry really enlightening and refreshing. So I wanted to have you on, Patrick. Welcome to the show. And maybe we'll start with this. Why don't you give a little like background? And then I want to hear, there's been, in my view, a lot of shifts in dentistry over the last 5 to 10 years around like the way you engage with an accountant or with a financial planner, and the way you think even about the business. Like you used to just like open a dental practice, you build it and they will come. And that's certainly not the case anymore. And so I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on how things have shifted in dentistry and where you feel like things are going. And we'll kind of chat finance and CPA and dentistry.
Yeah. So Stephen, I really appreciate you having me. Really excited to kind of talk to all the listeners here about the types of relationships they should have with their accountants moving forward. To your point, the dental industry is changing. Over the last 10 years, public accountants have moved from what I would call a traditional relationship where you talk to them around tax filing time, right? Today, right? Because the deadline being tomorrow.
Let's get it done.
Yeah, let's get it done. And how much am I going to get back, or how much am I going to owe, right? But in that process of evolution, we really wanted to start becoming more advisory, right? To your point, more forward-looking, proactive. So now you're talking to your accountants monthly, quarterly, or they're the first person that you call. And it's all because of what we call client advisory services. It's a whole nother segment of the public accounting world that's been evolving for the past 10 years. To your point, traditional accountants, primary focus has been compliance. And that is important, but it's a reactive relationship. And today's accountants, we're proactive, And we want to make sure we're making data-driven decisions at all time, especially when looking to the forward.
Yeah, I think one of the things too is I was just like listening to you talk. I think it's pretty common to have this relationship with your accountant because I've been all over the country and I've been to a bunch of like because naturally I'm at business course kind of related situations. And I think most dentists in general, or a lot of them, seem to work with like a local accountant that works with tons of small businesses, but maybe doesn't necessarily have like a dental focus, which I
Yep.
think puts you at a disadvantage personally, I think. If that's like if you're listening and you're doing that, then it might be a neighbor or friend or something, but man, I think it might be worth opening up your mind to someone who's got some dental expertise. And the reason why I say that is because of what you mentioned, Patrick. So I think it's helpful to have someone, make sure that we've got the right tax strategy. I've seen accountants also help with like bookkeeping and payroll and some of that stuff as well, which is important. But dental practices, there is so much opportunity there that can get missed if you don't have someone who's super number savvy. And here's one thing I've learned about dentists. They went to school to be clinicians, and our first product as a company was our analytics solution. And tons of dentists, I think, want to look at it and like want to be good at it, but they don't either have the time or they're just like honestly not super stoked about numbers. And
Yep.
what I love about combining some of the like looking at the dental intel and forward-looking stuff with CPAs is one thing you do get with CPAs is they freaking love numbers, So
Yes,
like
we do.
it's the right profile to say, hey, like if there's one of the professional services that I could say, hey, could I lean on you a little bit more to help look at my business and think through not just like what we did historically and where because the other thing I'll say is a lot of CPAs are, I think they over index on looking at where we spent money. That's important, right? Like our overhead, but they'll over index on looking at overhead just because I think that's what they have access to. They have access to QuickBooks or Zora or what's the other big one in
Sage
dentistry?
Intact.
Yeah, Sage. Yeah, exactly. So they'll have access to that, and so they'll look at that. But yeah, talk me through maybe more when you say, hey, client advisory services and looking more forward thinking. Talk me through what that means so that folks listening can like wrap their minds around how that's different than what they're doing with their current
Yep.
CPA.
Yeah, and listen, all the people that are using the local CPAs, there's nothing wrong with that. But to your point, as the dental industry has evolved, there should be more demand out of the services that you're getting from other partners that are at the table with you. When we think about clinicians, they're going to have a team of advisors around them, right? A little table, and those tables should be aligned with the way we're thinking and the way we're moving, and that not just with the doctor, but also the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And with the CAS practices coming out in public accounting, their whole goal is to be specialized within a niche. So now we're more available, to your point, more dental specific accountants are more available with technology now to any doctor across the country and across the world. Even. We work with people in Canada now, and I can have normal conversations with them at all times due to technology.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, COVID, right? And if there's one great thing was that, and one thing you touched on there is that yes, we're looking at our overhead. We might be looking at the QuickBooks files and so forth. But in those monthly calls, I'm also pulling out the dental intelligence file and I'm looking through it because I have my own access. So most clients I work with, I kind of require to get access to the dental intelligence accounts if they have it. So we can be looking at those operational metrics to make sure what is happening in the clinic is translated to the financials. Because like you brought up, they're in the chair all day. They don't want to look at a P&L or Excel or all that other stuff where I'd rather be doing that all day long and kind of tell them a story, right? And part of the things about the advisory services is we want to have monthly relationships. I tell my clients all the time, I suck at quarterly relationships. I'm really good at monthly, to where I'm coming to them with beautiful management reports that are kind of like dental intelligence in a sense, where it's more graphical. It's not just hard numbers.
Yep.
And we're able to kind of tell the trends, what's happening, how's the practice doing, and then align that with their long-term strategic vision. And I think that's the biggest thing when we think about accountants nowadays is, they need to be forward looking and focused on the vision and where the ship needs to go and how we can help these owners chart their course to that horizon.
Yeah. So what are some of the common like goals that you're working with dentists? And I'm assuming like I'm thinking like there's associates that want to like buy their practice. There's like older dentists that are like, hey, I want to get her to sell. So talk me through like, what are some of the common forward-thinking things that you're working on.
Yep. So no, great point. So a very hot topic is definitely associates buying in. We have a bunch of mature clinicians that we're working with that have young, great associates that they want to be a partner. They want to help drive the business forward. And, those can be complicated conversations, in particular to the fact of, the current existing practices, they're at a very high value. And maybe some of the younger clinicians are just not at that point to where they can go take out that kind of loan to buy into that value.
Yep.
So what we do as accountants is we kind of help create associate pathways, and
Cool.
let's create a compensation model for the associate that does allow them to buy in and become a partner and help. And then also in the current time, they can start demonstrating that ownership responsibilities and leadership responsibilities from the clinical side. Other ones is really as simple as you can think. How can we get revenue per op up, right? Or how can we get revenue per patient up? Or what's our recare? What are those kind of conversations? Because when we look at revenue today, we ask the client, how does this feel? Do you feel like you're at I'm going to say optimal capacity? I'm not going to say max. Like no one's at 100%, right? But are you at an optimal capacity? Are you happy with this performance? If the answer is no, okay, let's have the next conversation of, hey, okay, what do we look at? Let's look at recare rate. Let's look at our hygiene. Let's look at different aspects from that perspective. Where I would say the traditional accountant 10 years ago would go, well, you're close to what you did last year. Pretty good job. Call me in March when, we need to file a tax return, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the big change is, right?
Maybe point out a few things that we could save a little bit of money if you don't buy some of this stuff,
Exactly. Or, we instead of actually having the conversation, hey, it's October, man, you might have a big tax liability. Let's talk about what we can buy. Do we need a new iTero? Do we need a new X-ray?
That's interesting.
Yeah. Hey, you want to expand? It might be a good idea to do that right now. Let's go ahead and find one and try to depreciate some fixed assets, drive down your tax liability because you've had phenomenal growth in the current year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I'm interested to know, when do you start? So you mentioned you'll kind of have monthly conversations ideally.
Yes.
And what can you kind of I don't know if this is the best way to do it. Can you kind of walk me through through a year what you talk about? Because I'm imagining I just know I have a lot of conversations towards the end of the year with dentists who are kind of okay, I'm closing out this year. I'm starting to think about next year. So a lot of the Q4 conversations are starting to gear up for planning. And then a lot of times planning bleeds into early Q1 where they're okay, new year, there's kind of the late bloomers that now I'm going to plan now that it's a new year, gotten through the holidays. But then so talk me through what are some of the common conversations, or maybe another question would be it's October, what should dentists be thinking about now at the end of the year? Excuse me. And then early in Q1 of this next year.
Yep. And so the most important quarter is definitely the fourth quarter. And I will say it even starts a little bit in the third quarter.
And tell us
why.
Why is that?
Yeah, it's the planning. We are planning for next year. We are thinking about next year already. So then we build out the plan for what we want to see down the road. We look at associates and we look at hygiene. What are their productions? Where are they at in their career, right? Are they doing $2,500 a day? How do we get them to $3,500 a day? Or how do we get them to more? I mean, that depends on specialty, of course, right? But how do we get them to bridge that gap and what kind of learning objectives do we need to put in front of them? All that planning and conversation, that's all happening now, right? So for me, my busy season as what I would call a managerial accountant really starts in October, and we're busy all the way through January, where a traditional tax person they're busy from January all the way through April, right? And my busy time now is building out my agenda for the next year. So as we build out this plan, this roadmap, once we start in January of next year, okay, how do we compare to our plan? Okay, this is where we missed. We missed these revenue goals. Why did we miss these revenue goals? Was it between this associate? Oh, he had a couple extra vacation days because, he won a trip to the Bahamas for some CE, right? Different things come into play. Or, hey, rent kicked up, significantly. Maybe we missed it in the planning on accident. Or there was another aspect of, hey, I saw a practice, I bought it, but we had a bunch of extra costs that came into play to get that facility up and going, right? And so really, we're mapping out our agenda. So our monthly conversation can range from, hey, you're doing great. We're aligned with what our plan needs to be for this year. We're on track to hit our revenue goal, whatever that might be. Everyone's happy. FTE count's great. Everyone's making money. Or it could be, hey, we got some tactical things we really got to start mapping out. And then from there, let's build out an agenda, like a quarterly agenda and a goal sheet, essentially, what's going to make your year great. And then let's start going after those goals and see if we can, achieve them. It's always driven about the vision of the leadership team, right? And so a lot of these conversations aren't always with owners too. They're also with the operators because they're big proponents of this aspect. Maybe they hate the practice management system and their front office teams complaining to them. So what do they need? What's the timeline for that? What are we going to miss? How's that going to work? Those are a lot of the conversations we have, but it all starts right now in the midst of the holiday season. It's all fun for us right now.
Now, as I was listening, I was thinking, I hope listeners will connect these dots, but I think it's so helpful to have a third party like looking at your performance. Here's like what came to my mind. So I had this goal this year where I wanted to run a sub 3-hour marathon. And I like took a stab at it in June and was like 17 minutes away, where I'm like, oh, okay, like fast, but like I'm a long ways out. And I've been running for a couple of years. And I finally decided, like, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet. Like, I have good training plans. Like, you can get so much information online. Like, I can read, like, what does it take to have, like, the right training plan? What do I need to be eating? And so I felt like I was doing, like, a lot of the right things, and was getting good results, but not, like the really good results, like the excellent ones. Right. So I finally decided that I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to hire a coach. And it has made, so I've been working with a coach now for the last, like, 4 months, 5 months, and it has made the world of difference. Like, just knowing that there's someone else that's like, so Strava is where all my run data is. So just knowing that there's this like other person that's looking at my performance, like, okay, like, hey, your heart rate was high, or like, how did that feel? Like, you ran faster than I had projected. How did that feel? Good. Okay, I'm going to make some tweaks to the plan because it looks like we can get a little more here. And then even just like him, like, reminding me of like what's important in the training and keeping me accountable to like the plan. Yep. It's amazing how valuable that is. So if you're point I'm trying to make is like, if you're going to have a relationship with your CPA, might as well have someone like, I'm listening to you, like these monthly calls, and I'm picturing that being so much like very similar to my calls with my running coach, where it's just like, you're looking over the performance of the business. Okay, how are things going? And you're a third party, emotions detached from this thing. I can just ask questions like, hey, how did that feel? Or how did that go? Hey, why are we low? Why are we, or hey, we're ahead, what's going well? Can we like replicate that more consistently? Exactly. And have someone like point those things out and ask questions is so invaluable to a business, and just to like just performance, management in general. So even just that's helpful.
It is, and we really care about the emotional side of it, and we understand that. And that's the thing with today's accountants. They should be investing in your business. They should know the people that are, what your locations are, right? It's not like, oh, we've got 10 locations. It's like, okay, well, give me the geographic, like you should know the geographic area from an accountant perspective, right? Like you should know the key leaders within that organization and the key stakeholders. Who are the key people that are really helping drive that revenue? You're exactly right. And that's how the relationship should look like. And, and they should be long-term. Like that should be the intent. Our intent is long-term relationships for, because we want to be there and watch you grow. And that might be adding locations, or that's just internal growth, right? Like there's a bunch of practices that, they're young, they're at maybe 1.4 million in revenue, but they have the capacity to get to 2.7. That's a significant growth. Just like just for the listeners, 17 minutes is a substantially amount of time to like decrease down to 2 sub 2, right?
Oh yeah, which I did it, by the way. This coach got me through it. So I ran a 2:59:56.
There we go.
That was like 6 seconds faster than the goal, but hey, I did it.
Hey, my prior life, I played minor league baseball for the Nationals. We had mile goals, I want to add. And I remember trying to hit those. 30 seconds was a pain in the butt, right? Yes. I can only imagine 17 minutes on 24 miles. Like that's insane. So kudos to you for that. But to your point, like, that coach invested in you. He wants to know what's going on. He wants to hear your heart rate's up. Guess he's probably asking questions. Were you sleeping? I know you got a newborn kid. Like, what's going on? What, where are you resting enough? Are you out back playing with the kids, staying on your feet too long? Right? Like, those are probably the relationships, and that's what you should have from your accountants nowadays. most of my accountants, most of my clients, I mean, have my number, right? So I get cell phone text messages, hey, this is what I'm thinking, right? And I think that's the big thing is the accountants today, they shouldn't be the last person you call anymore. You need to find a relationship where they're one of the first people you call. They might not have to be your first most trusted person, but they need to be in that top three or so
Yeah.
to make sure they're really helping you, drive the business forward.
Well, let me ask you this. This is kind of on the fly, but one of the things that I appreciate hearing is like success stories, like other people that have hit their goals. So like just like kind of off the cuff, do you have any like favorite where it's like, hey, I helped, these clients hit these goals and it was like a heck of a lot of fun examples that you could give to us?
Yes, no, there's a lot of them. One of my favorite ones though is last year. We had a group that went from 5 locations to 9,
Yeah,
and they did it
that's
pretty
a big
quickly.
deal.
It was huge. It
Yeah.
was a big group. It was a big jump, and during that time there was a lot of investment,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of some staff turnover just because of different things happening in life. There's people out on leave for other different aspects in life, so we missed the goals by a lot,
Mhm.
and it was getting pretty hard. Like I would say, EBITDA and net income and all that dropped significantly low. They were probably getting close to single digit EBITDA, maybe a little bit higher, maybe low double digit EBITDA. We worked through the list. We worked through all of the vendors. We went down each entity and goes, okay, well, this vendor and this vendor, they're doing the same thing. Can we just not pick one and see if we can
Mhm.
use this one? We actually dove harder into the dental intelligence analytics, and we started looking at the customer build report and see, okay, how's our backdoor with a lot of these?
Yep.
They used some different insurance things and found out some insurance issues that they ran into with credentialing. Um, Multiple aspects, right? So that's why we got to where we were. But as we kept having those monthly conversations and working through them, I can say today they're at now like a 21% EBITDA margin with
Yeah.
all the adjustments. So like double their EBITDA within the matter of 13 months just by sticking to their plan, holding everyone on the leadership team accountable and staying and believing in themselves essentially.
Mhm.
And that's where we are today. So it's a phenomenal job. But even we have another one I just want to add just because it's not the big ones because I know there's listeners on here like I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
There's some that are like I just care about my single store location.
Yep.
And we have some that are single store that they've grown their revenue, I would say about 35% with a mature practice just by diving into the payer mix contracts, kind of understanding their associate schedules and like how they can move things around and make things better to where the main doc can do more ortho to help provide that service. So they've grown theirs significantly. And that's a two practice group, and they don't have aspirations to be big and like what a lot of people are doing. But again, using the technology to kind of understand what's going on from a production perspective and then tightening up those expenses because with today's resources, dental practice should be very profitable. We shouldn't leave anything on the table. I mean, if I have any advice to anybody, don't leave it on the table. Just take it, donate it, do something, whatever you want with it, but there's definitely resources out there to help you make this happen.
Yeah, totally. No, I asked this question. Time flies. I can't believe that we're already like kind of creeping up on time, but I asked this question to every single guest that I have on the show, and it is, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? So I'd love to hear your answer to that question, Patrick.
Yeah, growth in dentistry to me, growth to me means finding your North Star and accomplishing all the goals along the way, enjoying the process and obtaining that North Star. I
Yeah.
will say that North Star might keep moving a little
Yeah.
bit, but enjoying the process, everyone's having fun, everyone's aligned. Like to me, that's growth within dentistry is more alignment and everyone's rowing in the right direction.
Yeah, this morning I just listened to a podcast, speaking of the North Star moving from he's now 6-time world champion bodybuilder. I think Chris Bumstead, I think is his last name.
Okay.
Kind of a unique last name. But he talks about that exact thing, how like yesterday's goals become today's standards. And that's kind of like repeats itself over time. But it's also really cool. Like the North Star moving, you realize, wow, I'm capable of more. You hit that new big goal and you're like, okay, like now I can I have systems in place. I know how to operate at this new high level. And so then, yeah, it's hard not to want to be like, okay, well, what's next? So
Yep.
I totally agree with that. So thank you for having for coming and joining me and having a conversation around like finances in the dental world. Is there any like lingering advice you want to give? And then I'll have you kind of share contact information if folks that are listening want to, get in touch with you, learn from you, anything you might want to offer to them. So
Yeah, I mean, my biggest advice is you're not in it alone, especially when it comes from the finance, right? There's a lot of clinicians out there that, they're wearing multiple hats, right? They're the owner, they're the dentist, they're the clinical dental officer. They're also, the CFO, they're the COO. They're wearing all those hats. You're not in it, you're not alone. There's tons of resources out there to help you with that process. And they don't have to be a monthly relationship. There's some that are quarterly and biannual for sure. But again, I think you guys can definitely get support if you're needing it. In that, always look forward, understand the history, but always look forward.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, and then my contact information, yes, like I'll just give you my cell. My cell is 863-660-3202. So call, text me if you got any questions or just want to shoot the breeze. And then my email is Patrick .Arnold at Elliott Davis, and that's 2 L's and 2 T's and Elliott.com.
I have to like double check that every time I go to like send you a message. Like, okay, yeah,
yes,
2 L's, 2 T's, and we'll throw those for those listening. We'll throw those in the show notes. So if you're driving and you're like, hey, I wasn't able to like pencil that down, we'll throw in the show notes so you can get his contact information super easy. So, well, thank you, Patrick, for joining us today. I always love chatting with you. It's a good life, up to cool things. The future's bright. So, and listeners, thanks again for joining us this week. This has been another episode of the Growth in Dentistry podcast. My name's Steve Jensen, your host and fellow data nerd. Keep growing.